Hi, Steve Shultz here. We are with ElijahStreams today. A lot of times you're seeing us on the live shows that are actually out of my home. Today we're in our actual studio and we're here with Kat Kerr.
Hi.
Good to see you. It's about time we've gotten together.
I know, I'm excited to be here.
So it's really great to talk. What we decided to do today is we're going to talk about heaven.
Yes.
And what I want to do today is hit all the main questions. And we sat down yesterday and began to make a list. It's way too long for us to do, but we'll see where it goes. And we're going to do a second show for those watching. We won't even finish on this show, so watch for the second one. So I'm going to start right off by asking you the question that some people ask: how many times have you been to heaven?
I lost count after 1,000 times. I just gave up and stopped counting. But it's been 25 years this year.
Is it thousands then?
It is thousands, yes.
And how do you define between going to be wherever heaven is versus the Lord walking through the wall? I mean, is it just as many times he comes through the wall and talks to you, or what?
I think it's probably more being caught up to heaven. In the beginning it was. Right now I think it's a lot of walking through the wall. He just walks through the wall. I mean, just like, well, if you could, that you would just walk through the wall, it's that real. It's not like he's a little wispy thing. Remember, the Lord is actually in his glorified body, so he walks bodily through the wall and just will talk to me. Sometimes he sits next to me. Sometimes it's the Father.
I was going to ask that.
It is. Usually if the Father walks in, it's not to sit down and have a conversation. If he's going to have a conversation, he'll catch me up to heaven. If he's going to say something important to me, like write something on the wall, which he does often, he walks in, he'll glance at me and walk over to the wall, write whatever he wants, and then he'll say, take a picture, because it'll be gone after a while.
Really?
And then he'll stand there and explain to me what this is and why I'm doing this, and then he'll just walk back out.
What do you mean, take a picture? Do you mean take your actual camera and take a picture?
Yes.
Oh, of the Lord's handwriting?
Yes.
What?
He wrote, the last time he did that, he wrote the next 50 years of my life on the wall and what I would be doing in the platforms I would be speaking from. He's very detailed, and I'm a detailed person, which is why he uses me to do this. So.
Wow. Now I've heard you talk about, we'll get into the heaven thing in a minute, but what are you going to say? Well, how does your answer when people say, well, I thought the word said that God said no one can see me and live?
Well, I have to tell you this. That's probably more about your flesh. That, you know, we die to our flesh, right? A lot of people don't understand that. That's your rights, your opinions, your attitudes. When it says to walk in the Spirit and not the flesh, he's talking about that kind of a thing. And I know anyone who's been caught up to heaven and saw the Father, they were never the same. But you also have to understand that even in the Word, John himself, in the book of John, said himself, no one can see the face of God and live. He was talking about the Father. But what did God do in Revelation? What did he do in Revelation 4? He caught him up, caught John up. Remember, he's on the Isle of Patmos. He was in the Spirit, which is a place, and he heard a voice, he saw the door open, and he was caught up before the Father's throne.
Really? Okay.
The Father is the only one who has the rainbow coming from him. It describes it in Revelation, right? And that's who John saw. So John actually did see the face of God.
Okay.
And this is when he was alive and was caught up in his body and taken there.
And there's that place in, you know, the Lord is rebuking, I don't know if it's Miriam, but he said with Moses, I speak to him face to face.
That's right.
So as one man talks to another. So
in Genesis, exactly what happened when he called them out of the tent of meeting, and he was rebuking them because they were complaining about Moses, thinking he was something special and he was the only one who could see God. And God clearly told them, when I speak to him, I don't speak to him in dreams and visions. I speak to him face to face. So there you go.
Wow.
I think it has a lot to do with what the Father desires, and if it's the Father who does it. I obviously don't call him from heaven to come off his throne. He comes down because he has something he wants revealed or wants me to know there's going to be a change in what he's having me do. And each time he catches me, whether it's up in heaven or comes to me, is something really important.
Wow. Now I would have assumed, and I've known you for what, almost 10 years, 7, 8, 9 years, and I would have assumed before knowing you that you must have sought the Lord for months or years to please help me go see heaven one day.
I sought the Lord because I loved him, and I did it for 20 years. But that didn't change or didn't really cause what was going to happen, because God said he chose me before I was born to reveal heaven to earth and to create things that were in heaven and put them on earth. So it's a commission I have.
So it wasn't that you begged him and finally
I never
said
asked once to go to heaven. I just wanted to be with the Lord. I wanted to know Jesus Christ more. And every night between midnight and 4 for 20 years, I would meet with him. In the beginning, he didn't show up, but I acted like he was there. I would just tell him, I didn't complain about things. I didn't give all my needs. I just really wanted to know him, and I'd say how much I loved him, that I would love to be just like him. I wanted people to know his heart, and I wanted a relationship with him. And one night, maybe months into all this, he walked through the wall for the first time in my home. I got undone. I thought I would melt into the floor because of the love that he carries. And so it was amazing. And from that time, he came often, but I didn't stop doing it. And then in 1993, he actually came and said something to me that they were going to give me a new thing to do and to prepare for this new thing. And so for 3 years, I really sought him. He trained me in different things. And then in 1996, he walked through the wall of my home again while I was doing dishes. And that's when he said, the Father and I are going to start taking you on tours of heaven.
Wow.
And from that day, he took me, and they haven't stopped.
And so you're going all the
time.
time.
And it increased a lot. So now it's almost every day, sometimes several times a day.
Well, and I've heard you talk about you were shopping one time, you put your hand up to take an item.
Yes.
And between the time you reached up and came back
cart.
down, you had already been to heaven, what seemed
Yes.
like about 45 minutes or something like that?
Absolutely,
That's
because
just crazy.
there's no time in heaven. There's no time.
Well, so you said one of the main questions that people ask you is there a literal heaven? And I'm thinking, well, why would they ask that? But that's what do you answer?
It's a viable
then?
question. They want to know if it was a place where they would really live. It talks about mansions in heaven in the Bible. I was raised on the Word of God from the time I was born. My dad was a very precious person who loved everybody. I'm one of 15 kids, but I chose to spend time with my earthly dad, like I did later with my heavenly one. And so he taught me about the Word, and so I was accustomed to what the Word said and things. So
it is a literal place.
There's a literal place, a literal heaven, and I learned very early on that your spiritual body inside of this natural body, this physical body, you have a spiritual body that looks just like it except much better. Your spiritual body doesn't age. It grows to a certain point, and then after that you're like timeless. So when you die out of this physical body, which goes in the ground, it's what rests. Your spiritual body is taken to heaven either by Jesus in chariots, or you're just caught up by your own guardian angel and you're taken to heaven. And it is a literal spiritual place. It's a planet. It's not a flat place. In the book of John,
a planet, in the sense of a round?
Yes,
Oh,
round.
interesting. I never heard
So
it.
forget the flat earth people.
That's really, so heaven is a
Heaven is
interesting.
a planet bigger than our whole galaxy.
Wow.
And there's such life even in the atmosphere, even up in the sky of heaven, there's life going on. And you have a literal mansion. He wouldn't have said you didn't. So you're going to sit on all of your beautiful furniture, probably made by Jesus. These mansions are not made by human hands, and they have some under the water. Well, I'll talk about that later. I know we mentioned mansions, but you have a real mansion. You have a real life. You taste the food. You walk on the ground. You don't walk through the trees. Your spiritual body in a spiritual place. Like you live here, okay? You're a
So it feels
body.
like you're in your spiritual body, but you're saying if you walk up to a tree, you could touch the tree.
You hug people
You could
in
climb
heaven.
the tree.
You can climb the tree
Okay,
if you wanted to. It'd probably be talking to you while you did that. You eat real food, except no animals are killed. It's all made out of light, but smells like steak, pizza, chicken, whatever. And so you live a literal life, and you get to use the gift God put in you. Like if you're a baker in heaven. Jesus will visit you a lot. He likes sweets. And so you have an actual life in this mansion in heaven.
That's amazing. Well, let's go. And one of the questions people say, well, what happens the moment I die? Now, you already kind of mentioned that, but you're dying and suddenly you've taken your last breath.
It doesn't matter where you are or what situation you're in. You could be very sick, could have been sick a long time. Your spiritual body will begin to lift out of the physical body.
Just like in the movies, because you see
Just
people
like
just
in the
step out of
movies.
their body. It's
Usually
like
your guardian angel is there, and what begins to happen before you, many times you'll see your guardian angel before you step out of that body, and they're actually saying, come on, let's go, we have to go. And sometimes Jesus will be there and he'll be saying the same, it's time to go, come on. And people sometimes resist a little bit, but eventually they're going to come out, and the minute they step out, they're whole. There's no sickness, there's no age, no handicaps whatsoever. The life of God flows. I think the life of God comes, everybody talks about peace. There's peace, but there's joy, there's celebration, there's excitement. You know you're going home. And
it sounds like it comes to you pretty quickly, but you don't know at first kind of what's happening. It sounds like for a moment.
Well, but this is the thing you think is strange. You come out of your body and you see your body laying there,
okay,
and you go, okay, how can I be there when I'm here? And you instantly feel yourself, because you're a spiritual body, right? But you can feel yourself, and people are surprised. And they go, man, I feel good. And here's family members saying, we want you to come back. If you were 99, you're not going to come back, okay? And then either Jesus or your guardian angel will take you on up to heaven through the cosmos. Literally, you can go through and see all kinds of things through the cosmos. Sometimes people are taken by their family members' homes just to wave,
really?
Even though they can't
really?
see them. Yes, they actually...
Their family members on Earth,
yes,
they're taken by almost
yes,
as if to say goodbye.
Yes, absolutely.
When you talk about the cosmos, you said something recently, and I don't know if this is always true, but the way you described it is when we see things about outer space and Star Trek and Star Wars, there's the black space, and then once in a while there's a planet.
Yeah.
You said at least at one point God would take you on a tour, and the space was not black.
It wasn't black. And now when he takes me, I'm in my spiritual body. I'm not in this flesh body. So in your spiritual body, you see things that you didn't even know were out there. But he takes you like through the nebulas, up to the planets, and they are filled with light.
It's light, not
It's light,
black.
because you have to understand there's a spiritual realm and a physical realm, but they're like together at the same time. In your physical body, you don't see all the light that's in the spirit realm, but in your spiritual body, you would see all of that light.
Wow.
And so it's like a whole different thing going through there in your spiritual body. And most people do get to go on a tour around the cosmos. And I say the cosmos because the word universe means by the Big Bang theory.
Oh, okay.
And I think in a lot of the ancient writings, they call it the cosmos. They call it the cosmos in heaven. And that means by God's design.
Yeah.
So,
you told me one time, and different things mean something special to different people. What you told me kind of sounded special to me, that God would do this kind of funny thing. And without telling the name of the family, because it was a real family, there was actually pictures on the wall of somebody's mansion from their time on Earth. That seems really weird, but also kind of cool.
Yeah, they do have a gallery. You do have pictures of your family members, but this is the thing. In the people's mansions are pictures of babies and people that aren't even born yet.
Really?
I don't think I got to tell you that.
No, you didn't tell me that.
This one person's mansion I was taken to, they had a couple of brothers and a sister that I knew of, and their pictures were on the wall, but there were other siblings. And they hadn't even been born yet, and the Holy Spirit said, these are those who will be born and are not born yet.
It's like, I mean, I couldn't fathom, to me it was like, really, because there's a few pictures from our kids or my wife, especially when we were young and we had these great pictures together, and you're saying God would take some of those, even though one day the elements will burn up with fervent heat, he's going to take some of those photos, and it'll be waiting for me in my mansion.
Absolutely, yes.
That is so, to me that's cool. Someone else would say, I don't want to know anything from my...
If your house was burned up in a fire and all your precious things like that were lost, those same pictures you used to treasure, he will have in heaven for you.
That's unbelievable. Talk to me, or about transportation. There got to be a lot of different ways to travel around here.
Remember, I keep reminding people I'm not talking about earth, okay?
Yeah.
Earth is a shadow in heaven, which means it says in the Bible that heaven is a country and a city. So that's why we have city areas and we have country areas. It's because heaven does.
Really?
And the transportation, they have kiosks. Like it would maybe 12 people could step into it. It's like a big frame-like thing, and light is shooting out, and you step into the beams, and they will take you to the other side of heaven instantly. That is one way I've experienced that. Another way is when you begin to worship, your worship is visible. Your song, the words are visible, ribbons of color intertwine with your words when you worship, and you're caught up and you actually ride on that worship all the way into the throne room.
You ride up on the worship that you just
sing as you're singing.
Wow.
You're riding on that worship, and there's like ribbons of color. Like when people sing now in a meeting, I see ribbons of color coming out of their mouth.
Really?
The same thing with instruments, and because I'm a seer, so this is in the spirit realm what you're creating. And heaven, it's a substance. It's something
and you can see it on earth now, right?
Yes, I can.
I got to ask this because I was talking to someone in the studio before that, and before this program, and we were talking about there are times when we worship God, we don't even feel like worshiping.
Yes.
But we know we're supposed to worship because He's worthy of our praise, so that's like a sacrifice of praise. And I have felt like, to me, it must not be worth that much because it's not flowing from me. I'm doing it as a sacrifice.
Maybe it doesn't sound so beautiful, right? But it's coming from your heart, and you're honoring God in the highest way in your worst day.
In the highest way.
Yeah, in the highest way, because when your worst days, you're worshiping Him anyway. You're very dangerous against hell when that happens. No, when worship happens on the earth normally, it is collected, number one, by angels a lot of times, but it also goes up through the atmosphere, and it's put into the bowls before the altar of God, and it creates an incense. Well, that sacrifice of praise is the most beautiful incense in the throne room when someone's doing that, but it also creates a weapon. As you do that, when you say that, you're worthy anyway, you are my God, and I will not serve another, you are it. Missiles come out of your mouth, and they go up through the second heaven where Satan has this little mock kingdom set up, and you actually blow up parts of it. I mean, really, it explodes. They have to try to rebuild all the time.
Really?
And so you're very dangerous against hell. And your worst days, we should always worship God, especially on those days.
Literally, this has never been taught to me. So, I'm just going to say back to you what I just heard. When I'm having a cruddy day and I feel like doing nothing, there is this massive, like, atomic nuclear power. If I say, Lord, you're worthy anyway, I just feel empty, but nevertheless, you're worthy. You're saying missiles are flying out at that point.
Yeah, it's like missiles of light. They fly out of your mouth straight up to heaven, and on the way up to heaven, they hit Satan's little mock kingdom in the second heaven.
Awesome.
And literally whatever is in the way blows up. It will blow up. He's got these mock streets of gold that look horrible. He's got his trophy rooms he's got there. He's got his throne sits on a mountain of skulls, literally. And whatever's there is going to blow up. So he's already patching and repairing everything. And so he didn't think that. He didn't think anybody would worship God if he was trying to rule over them or crush them down.
And you're saying that actually is also a sweet smelling aroma to the Lord.
Aroma. I've been in the throne room when people were worshiping, and I knew somebody was having a really hard time. The aroma increases. It's like it comes into you like life. You can see it like wafts of light. And oh my gosh, the aroma, and the Father's just receiving that praise. It's very precious to Him.
That is amazing. I had heard this concept of it being important to the Lord when Ann Elmer wrote, we published a book called Transported by the Lion of Judah, where she was riding on the lion, and God took her to a place where there was this the term was very dry, not very powerful worship, but they were doing the best they knew because they didn't have what we might even consider the full gospel. And the lion said, "This is one of my favorite places to go because
there you go.
I can't even fathom that it's like everything's turned upside down. That when it was the hardest to worship and the driest, God is like loving it and appreciating it the most. Because we're looking at times like that. I'm looking at someone up there dancing in the spirit and they're flowing and going, and you think, boy, wouldn't it be nice to worship like that? But God's looking at it differently. So when we go to heaven, my first question is, if I get to heaven and someone that I love, let's say one of my brothers and sisters, because a couple of them are not serving the Lord right now, And let's just a what if one of them never chose the Lord and didn't make it? Am I going to be sad for the rest of eternity because I know that they didn't choose?
There's a few dynamics to that everyone needs to know. Number one, if you prayed for them adamantly to know Christ, it gives Christ the ability at the time of their death to ask him if they want him. Many times you will maybe think they didn't make it, but they did. In the very first trip they took me on, that was something Jesus explained to me. However, if for whatever reason they did not make it, that is not something that would cause you suffering. I know that's hard for people to think, but when you are in heaven, living in the very presence of God himself and Jesus Christ, any sufferings, any kind of pains, they don't touch you. It isn't that you wouldn't care, but at that point in your life, you would realize and understand, like everyone else on the earth, they had a choice to make, and it just wouldn't cause suffering. However, 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to make it because of your declaration and your stand for them. And that was the time when Jesus said, make sure you tell everybody to never stop believing for their family members to make it. It gives me permission because of your words, what you dare decree will be established unto you. And if you're standing in faith for that, then even at that very second, even if you're not there, if you're there and you can't see, he will still meet with them and say, do you want me?
So I have, like right now as we speak, I have probably 4 siblings that aren't serving the Lord. So you're saying, or the Lord's saying,
yes.
if I'm standing in faith for them, saying, Lord, I want my siblings, I name them all, I want them to know you,
yes.
I'm standing for them, I'm trusting that you're going to say, you're saying I can pretty well trust that God's saying, I'll take that, I'll see.
Because he can't let your words drop to the ground. The Bible talks about that, your words, how important your words are, so important. Your faith, you're releasing faith on their behalf for their salvation. And there's actually something he has me teach people. Father, I declare that my loved one will make it into heaven. They will be a living testimony of the saving power of Jesus Christ, and they will not miss their destiny with you. But you don't have to say those words, but those are really good words to use. You're out of your heart saying, God, I want them to make it. Please let them be in eternity. I don't want them to be in hell. I'm standing in the gap for their salvation. If you say anything similar to that prayer, then pretty much he's going to meet with them at their time of death.
Wow.
And he has the keys, and I can't go into a lot, but he has keys. Those keys are to hell, death, and the grave. And those are the ones he took away from Satan, just to give everybody a reminder. It talks about that in Colossians. And that's why he rejoiced when he got them back, because that gave him the ability at that time of death, the keys of hell, death, and the grave.
Wow.
He had the right to do that if you were standing for their salvation.
Now I have, and my life sometimes is an open book because I just say it because it is. But like, okay, my 2 sisters who are not serving the Lord
Yes.
can understandably be not serving the Lord because they were molested over many, many years.
Yes.
And it became known by everybody way long after they were adults. Nobody knew.
Yes.
Okay, so now, probably even because of what he did, they're not serving the Lord. One's totally into a Wiccan, witchcraft, the whole thing.
A lot of people do go into the darkness if they've experienced a lot of that.
So they
growing
went
up.
that way, and I can stand for them. But here's the thing. Here's the rub. The one who did the damage to them is with the Lord now.
Because he repented.
He repented and received the Lord. They would never forgive him,
He's
but
up
the
there
Lord
declaring
did.
over them,
So
trust
when
me.
they get to be there, and they will go, because I'm going to stand for them to go.
Yes, yes.
What's that going to be like? They're going to be up there, and there's this father that abused them. How does that work?
They won't think that way anymore. You are so filled with the love of God. You hold nothing against anybody. When you arrive there, or those who, let's say, were on the other side, maybe they were the abused ones and they arrived, and here comes those who they didn't think maybe would get saved, but they're saved. There is no hate. There's no anger. There's none of that there. There's nothing but love. And let me tell you, the person up there will actually say to them, I am so sorry.
He will.
I didn't treat you well. I want you to know I love you. I'm so glad that you're here. That's probably not because of me, but I'm grateful that you made it. So let's just love one another. And instantly, that relationship
Wow.
is bonded right
Wow.
there.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. I love that you're saying that, because this was probably a decade ago. This sister said, because I was trying to say, Dad's with the Lord now, and
They probably didn't want to hear that.
no, and she said, if he's there, I don't want to go.
That was
And
what I was going to say.
And I understand that, but I didn't know what to say. What do you say?
You just say, well, I'll just keep praying for you and believe in God for you. That's what you say.
Yeah.
You can't really explain or even make them want to change that.
Right.
It's something that has to happen with them and God. But because you're standing for her salvation, she will get into heaven, because
Yeah.
you're not dropping that.
I'm not dropping
and your
that.
dad's up there saying the same thing, by the way, that, my daughter will become a living testimony to the saving power of Jesus Christ. I'm standing for her also.
Well, I was going to ask that. Do those that go before, do they still
do pray.
intercede?
Yes, they do.
And their prayers are...
Their prayers are actually mixing with your prayers. They're going to get caught between heaven and earth. Just like this is what happens.
So where two or more agree on anything. So my dad and I are praying
You are
for these two
absolutely
sisters.
in agreement for their salvation.
That's like huge. That's like huge.
It is huge.
Okay, so husband and wife, one goes to be with the Lord years before, which is my father and my mother, and my mother gets there. What's the relationship like? Do they live next door? Do they walk arm in arm? Are they friends? What is it like in heaven for a married
They will
couple?
totally remember they were married, and they will be really good friends. And because most families live real close to each other, they'll probably live either next door or down the way. Maybe somebody wants to live by the Crystal Sea, someone wants to live in the mountains, but there'd probably be a place in between the areas somewhere. Everybody does things together as a family. They remember they were family, but of course it says in the Bible that you won't be husband and wife in heaven. You'll be like best friends.
Am I probably going to call my dad, hey dad? Is he?
You can call him dad if you want to, but probably most people will call everybody by their first name
Really?
in heaven. But you'll still know that you were his son.
Yeah, it's almost hard to think of.
And the things you remember are the great things.
You remember the good things.
Or you create new great things if you didn't have any of those. So.
And if someone, and I remember asking this, I can't remember quite how you answered it before, but someone had always wanted to be married, and it never happened. I've had multiple letters that they said, ask Kat, I've always wanted to be married. What will happen when I get to heaven? I don't know what kind of answer they're looking for, but what do you say to someone like that?
When you get to heaven, no matter who let's say you had a friend, a close friend, maybe you were engaged, you died and went to heaven, you would be good friends in heaven. But there's only one bridegroom in heaven. And when you go home to heaven, you are going home as the father's son or his daughter. And there's going to be a wedding ceremony in heaven. You know that. Everyone knows that as a believer. Jesus Christ is the bridegroom. And marriage on earth is only symbolic of Christ and the bride. It's just symbolic. And because there isn't any of that fleshly thing going on, it's a spiritual love which is much higher than the earthly love. Everyone in heaven is in love with Jesus Christ, number one. So they'll still have that feeling of having someone who loves them especially. It doesn't matter how many people are in heaven. Jesus loves everybody in heaven and can spend time just with them in heaven. But there's going to be a wedding ceremony, and it will be with the bride of Christ in heaven. Christ is the only bridegroom. And the Father actually spent time explaining to me why you can't go home married. If you went home married, that would be bigamy, because you can't be married to Jesus Christ and already be married. And everyone wants that. Everyone wants that relationship with Jesus Christ. So it's all going to be good.
Yeah, and I had a woman that wrote, and she had always wanted to be married. And another one wrote and said, and I remember asking you about this. And she was looking for something that I didn't even know how to answer, but she said, I have been celibate on purpose my whole life. And she wanted to know what the reward in heaven would be for that.
I just think the relationship with Jesus, you've already got a super close relationship with Jesus. Some people don't. Many people got born again, probably within just a little time of going to heaven. But you can build that relationship with him. He wants to. But those who already have that intimacy with him, yes, it's very special. Some people maybe feel like, God, they're so in awe of Christ, right? But when you have that bond with him, you just run up and grab him and hug him. And so that is really the reward, that you've already built that relationship. It's not something you have to try to build on in heaven. You already have that real intimacy together.
It's not like, it's not like the Lord is... We've talked about the Lord, putting gifts in your mansions and building things in your mansions.
Yes.
I've not heard you yet or anyone else say, because you were celibate on earth and you did this on purpose, there's going to be this special mansion for you.
There's a special place, actually. It's called Passionate Paradise. I don't know if I've ever told you about it.
No, I don't know. I've not heard
It's
that.
where those who really gave themselves to Christ, loved him on the earth and you, of course, everyone can go there, but the greater relationship you've built with him, you get to do more things there with him.
Okay.
One of the things I know he does is he gives you his own song, or he sings to you alone in this place. And Jesus is very romantic, not the way we would look necessarily like it down here. It's all about that closeness you have with him. So she'll be greatly rewarded for that, having given herself to him.
Talk about, I don't know if you called it a secret garden or your own garden. You said every house has a garden, and what's that for?
Yes. Outside of everyone's mansion, there's a walled garden, a beautiful walled garden made only for you as that's your mansion. He gives you a key when you come to heaven. Jesus gives you a key. Anytime you want to be with him, you go in that garden and he comes to be with you. And the rose, it's a rose, the lock is a rose. And you put the key in the middle of the rose, there's a hole.
Really?
You put it and you turn it, yeah. And many different flowers, usually your favorite ones, some of the flowers that Christ loves, and actually is something that's one of his favorite things, are the flowers. He loves flowers. People leave them on the steps of the throne all the time, along with sweets. I think that's his second
He
love.
likes his sweets. So there's got to be, I'm trying to picture a mansion. I can picture a kitchen where you would make things, and if you wanted to, then
If you wanted to,
if you wanted to, for me, I'll just speak into existence if I
Yes,
can.
that's what I'm going to do.
But my wife's not going to want to cook, and she's even when she's visiting, But okay, so I can picture a gathering room. Okay, obviously there's no need for a bathroom. So
no
a
bathroom.
bedroom, you wouldn't think of a place to sleep. So what's in this mansion?
You have, this is the thing, God is so precious. If you always said you wanted certain things a certain way, like I want the biggest bedroom ever, but it's not just a bedroom. There'd be places to recline, to meditate, just to relax and everything. There are rooms like that in your mansion, and usually made lots of the times the way you would always want them made. So there's places that you can go that's just beautiful. Your favorite fragrances are like coming out of the wall.
Really?
Flowers, living flowers are growing out of the wall, singing to you. You have this place just to be, because let me tell you, sometimes you'll look a place to be alone because everybody wants to see you and know you, and they all know where you live in heaven. And so you have these beautiful places. I call them like parlor rooms or something. Places you just enjoy yourself. Maybe your closest friends you'll invite into that place to spend some time just chatting and laughing, talking about places you're going to go to in heaven. Your dining rooms could hold 100 people. It depends on if you like to entertain, if you want a lot of company. I was shown this one person's mansion. She could seat 100 people in her dining room.
Wow.
And everybody sat, it would look like king's tables. The gemstones were actually some of the stuff that were in the centerpieces, and living flowers like growing and singing on these tables. And everybody sat down, and all the plates were just beautiful, layered plates with all kinds of stuff. You'd sit there and say, I want roast beef. And then it appeared instantly. Someone goes, no, I want going to have fried chicken. No, I want seafood. And what everybody wanted instantly, you would actually say it at the same time, there's all the food, everybody eats, you taste the food, you can feel the food going in. It's made out of light, though.
It's not really roast beef. It looks like
it looks and smells like it, but no animals are killed in
Right.
heaven. No life is taken in heaven, okay? It's all made out of light. But if you want to cook, there's things that look like that stuff, and you have a full lot kitchen with things you never saw before. And the greatest thing is, I was also shown that somebody was making this massive salad about the big as this table, and they were like peeling this cucumber, and as they peeled it and it came off the end, it disappeared. There's no trash, no garbage anywhere in heaven, so they got to make food if they want to cook. I won't. I'll say chocolate cake, and that's probably what I'll have.
I'm going to declare and decree. Okay, let's talk for a minute about, you said, have friends, and you use the term if you have some special friends that you want to. So what I'm getting by that is that you have friends maybe that you had here on earth that are still your friends, and you have then special friends, and then do you make new friends that become your special friends?
You absolutely do, and some of those are the disciples or the prophets. Everybody wants to know you, so at one point when you come to heaven, Jesus is going to put on a big event for you in his own mansion. Now, I've never told you this. Jesus has his own.
No.
I said, okay, he had to live as a human. He deserves one. That's what I'd say that as a joke. And all the tables are set in his mansion for two things, dancing and eating sweets. And he will actually send this beautiful carriage for you. An angel will come with a personal invitation from Christ that will read itself to you. And he gives you the best things to wear.
It'll read itself to you?
Yes, the invitation will read itself to you. Everything's alive in heaven. And then they wait, you get dressed. I have all this beautiful stuff, and he takes you to this place. And everyone is there to meet you. There's apostles, there's prophets, probably Adam and Eve. Definitely probably Elijah likes to meet a lot of people. He didn't back in the day, but he likes it now. King David is always going to be there because King David loves to be with people and meet people. So this whole event is for you.
Wow.
And he does it, Jesus does it just for you. So you don't have to run around trying to find these people. You get a chance to meet them and know them. And later they'll come by and see you or invite you to their mansions and places.
And I do remember you talking about people's closets and their choices.
Oh, yes.
Talk about that for a minute.
You don't get a closet. You get a wardrobe room that probably could be like maybe 1,000 square feet. That would be holding your wardrobe. And that doesn't mean just like not just a gown and a robe. You get those. So you get your gown of righteousness, your robe of righteousness, and your gown of salvation, which are beyond amazingly beautiful. But you get whole wardrobes because there's so many things to do in heaven. We didn't talk about that yet. And so everything you would need to go anywhere and do and enjoy things in heaven, all those apparels are in there. Different things to go with all of them are in there. Your crown room is part of your mansion.
The crown room.
There's soul winners' crowns, there's the prophets, all kinds of different crowns you earn on this earth.
Really?
Yes, and so you can go in there and see all the crowns that you have gotten through your life and doing things for Christ.
Now, as I'm watching the clock, we got about 5 more minutes.
Yes.
What about, you said, I don't remember if it's in the house or out in the yard, there's like a doorway.
It's in the yard.
In the yard, and you can go to different places through this door. I love that. That's very Star Wars, Star Trek.
It is very Star Trek. Star Wars, Star Trek actually has some stuff that actually kind of exists in heaven. I love how that creativity drops into the mind of man. But one of the few times, probably one of the first 5 times I was taken to heaven, and I was taken to see this man's mansion. And it was amazing. It was beautiful. It was probably probably I'd say maybe a mile square. And then on his mansion grounds, I kept seeing these doors. They were suspended in air. There was a front of the door, and you could go around, and there's a back of the door. But when you went through the door on the same space his mansion was on, it was a whole different place that belonged to you.
Wow.
So you could have your house built along the Crystal Sea. But here's these different doors you walk through. You have a place in the Mountain of Spices also. And when you walk through, you could look out the door and see that mansion, the grounds. But you go in here and go all through this other area that belongs to you.
See, I can picture saying, okay, I want to go to this door. I want my cabin in the mountains.
Yes.
And I want my thing on an ocean with waves.
Yes.
And the Crystal Sea sounds pretty good too. So
Yeah,
you
it
can
does.
have multiple places.
Yes. The place, he said, I go to prepare a place. That place has so many things and properties that are all yours. Heaven is almost unlimited, and as many times I've been there, I haven't even seen just a little tiny bit of it.
Really?
Yeah, but I've seen many mansions built in the sky, on the ground, under the ocean, under the Crystal Sea, on top of the Crystal Sea, up in the Mountain of Spices. And so people who love these things, you're not going to be limited to one little spot.
Well, it sounds like, and then you talked about your mansion.
Mobile mansions.
Tell me about that. What does that even mean?
That means you get an RV in heaven. People who always wanted one and never got to have one, like my parents, always wanted to have one and tour everywhere. They have them, but they fly, and they're called MMs. This is all the truth. No way. By the way, I was psychoanalyzed by a psychiatrist and said there's no way I could lie because I've said all of these thousands of times. And
I have heard you talk about
no
M.
paper
What
in
is the
front of me.
M
It's
stands
all
for
stuff
what?
I
Mobile
saw.
mansion.
Mobile mansion. And your family, they go up into the sky. They park in the sky, and they're beautiful. They're not like, don't picture an Airstream or something like this. Way beyond that. It's very supernatural looking. And you all get in there and you leave and go together all over places in heaven. They have places to park. I keep telling people my dad is helping you park because it was something he loved to do. And then you come down and enjoy like you could go to the Mountain of Spices and see all that. There's beautiful things to see there. You could go to Videoland. You could go to the Artist Gallery. All these are places actually in heaven. The rainforest, where 12 massive trees support your whole mansion. There's no roof on it. Things can fly in and out. Nothing's going to make a mess. So you can imagine how people get so undone. There's adventure in heaven everywhere. And your family go all over to heaven, like tour places, do things, taste all the food everywhere. Then they come back and they park and they come down. Then they all go back to their own mansions.
I love this. I love this. When we do the next show, and watch for the one, because we'll do two of these today, they'll air different apart, probably weeks apart, but I'm going to ask you about people looking down. So don't tell us that now. We'll make people say that, but we're going to talk about people being able to look on us,
yes,
and see and pray for us and that sort of thing. And I did want to ask you one last question. When we're praying for our relatives, and God gives them one chance, is it like they die and they begin to come out like you described, and then at that point he says gives them a chance, he talks with them, then how does that work?
Sometimes he does it, especially if people are like in comas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're sort of normally unconscious. You have to understand your soul never sleeps, your spirit man never sleeps. Sometimes he reaches them at that point. And maybe they never come back, to their senses or something like that, where you could actually see and talk to them. They would still go to heaven. And normally it's right at that moment, when he says, because they are praying for you, and he'll actually show them who's praying. They're a strong believer. They've been with me a long time. They've stood in faith for your salvation. I can't let their words drop to the ground. They've declared and they have decreed this continually, that you would know me and serve me. So I have to ask you, do you want me now?
Wow.
And I tell you, they get undone. They weep and they will cry. And I can say, almost everyone will say yes. And they'll still repent. I repent of all my sins, all the times I reject you. I am so sorry. I really want you so much. And he goes, okay, then I will.
It made me think of that. Last night we were together and we were talking about, and this just happened, so it was like 2 nights ago. There was a man who betrayed me in business years ago. This is like in the mid-'80s, so it's a long time ago. Now he's 90-something, and he's been in a nursing home. They finally got him and brought him back because of different things, finances, and now he's back in the house. He's mostly gone.
Yes.
His mind is not there. He doesn't remember anyone. He didn't even remember. He looked at a picture of his son recently, and he said, "Who's that?" So it's not Alzheimer's, but it's one of those things that you go in and out.
Yes.
So the other night, he had one of those moments where he was lucid and he could think, and his son told me about it. He showed him a picture of me, and he looked at it and he concentrated for a minute. He says, "Oh, I didn't treat him right."
See?
And it's like, oh man, that was all I ever
actually
needed to
he
hear.
He knew he was wrong, right?
Yeah, it's all I ever needed.
Right.
And that's how the Lord does that. Confession.
Yes.
If you confess your sins, He's faithful.
And you had to forgive him anyway, right?
Absolutely, I'd forgiven him all these years, but it felt so good.
How wonderful of God to do that.
Yeah, it's like a real gift from God, and at that moment.
And when he gets to heaven, he'll really realize, man, when he gets here, I gotta tell him.
So it was me. Well, interestingly enough, this specific man. If you took the whole train through what he had done, he's responsible for what I'm doing now, because I saw him at a trade show once. He stuck his hand out and stopped me down the aisle and said, "Hey, have you thought about buying a house?" That's what it was in 1980.
Wow.
And one thing led to another, and we started going to the Bible study, and I received the Lord in a big way all through that particular man.
Wow.
So it goes. It's quite a story. So
that is quite a story.
Well, anyway, that's our time. When we do our next show, we're going to talk so much about what happens when your relatives can see us and different things. Believe me, there's a lot more to cover. So
make sure you still celebrate,
right?
Celebrate. God's going to do something powerful.
Celebrate, and I've learned that a lot from Kat, you know. So, and it's kind of that same thing where you celebrate no matter what it feels like.
That's right.
You celebrate, and it becomes that sweet smelling aroma. So, all right, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Have you been blessed and encouraged by the prophetic voices on ElijahStreams TV? We want to keep bringing you God's secrets through His prophets, and you have a vitally important role to help us keep doing this. Without your personal donations, we simply couldn't bring you the interviews we've aired with prophetic voices such as Cindy Jacobs, James Gall, Marilyn Hickey, Lance Wallnau, Todd White, Hakeem Collins, Johnny Enlow, and many more. More than ever, we need to hear what God's prophets are saying to the church and the nations of the earth. Here's how you can help us. Go to ElijahStreams.com and click the Donate Today button and send a gift to ElijahStreams TV. You can choose to be a monthly partner or give a one-time donation. No donation gift is too big or too small. It all helps to keep airing God's prophetic voices around the globe. If you prefer to give by phone, call the toll-free number listed here. To donate online, go to the link on your screen. Or you can text your gift by texting the word GIVE to 541-237-0303. Please donate today.